Well, we want to welcome back to the Photobug podcast because this gentleman has been on once before, briefly. We got Mathew Cicanese. Mathew, thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us again and coming back on the Photobug podcast. Again, I don't know how long it's been, but I know it was at the Tampa Bay Photo Shootout when we last had you on.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here with you both and great to be back on the podcast. You're right. It's been a few years since our chat during the photo shootout, and it was a lot of fun. Really quite the whirlwind during that experience, and it's been, like you said, a handful of years, but I'm excited to be here and really dive in deep on whatever's been on your mind lately. So what has been on your mind?
Well, the one thing is wondering what you've been up to. I know that you did some work for Nat Geo, and why don't you go ahead and bring us up to date? Bring our viewers up to date.
Sure thing. So in 2016, I was finishing up my MFA program. I was at Duke University's Documentary Masters, and that was about the same time that I had met you, Jim, and I was involved with Tampa Bay Photo Shootout. I was leaning more into public education programming as kind of a, public storyteller, a workshopper, if you will, someone who's coming into this space of interactive and engaged learning and really activating with the communities that I wanted to start helping learn how to navigate their own creative paths.
That sounds great.
I'm sorry.
I thought you were finished there.
Might be a bit of a lag. I'll remind myself.
Go ahead. Keep going.
I was just thinking about the next thing. So I was working, as you said, on different projects, some of which were with National Geographic, other things with Canon. And along the way, I was finding myself at different places around the world. So in 2017, I was in Ecuador, Sri Lanka, and British Columbia, Haida Gwaii, the island of Haida Gwaii. And then 2018, I found myself back in Iceland doing some more expeditions, and even on the island of Surtsey, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. I was very humbled to get to go to this volcanic island that is still an active volcano and a living lab where scientists are going back every year to tell the story of how Earth comes to be.
That's the one where people are restricted from going to, isn't that correct? You have to have special permission.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I was quite surprised when the scientists said they were going to work on getting me access with their team. And like you said, it's very restricted to, protect that delicate ecosystem. So the fun part is now years later, we've got all these volcanoes starting to bubble up around the world, particularly in Iceland. So my fiance and I have been watching pretty much nonstop, checking on them every day because they change daily. And honestly, we're excited to get back over there later in the year when all the little mosses and life forms start to, take growth upon the new land.
Yeah, I'm heading back to Iceland. Let's see, this is in early September. Actually, I'm just going to be in Reykjavik, but I'm kind of toying with the idea of going a little early so I can go take a look at that volcano, because I understand it's not far from Reykjavik. And then we're going to Greenland.
Oh, lovely. That sounds excellent. Yeah, it's interesting. I was thinking about September as well, because I think that's just the cusp of, having the end of those long midnight sun summers, which are fun if you really want to get out all night and go shooting landscapes and macro. I actually went with a client once. We took them on a private expedition to Iceland, and I think he and I were out until 3:30 in the morning, and it's just, we got lost in it. It's this magical time where sunset just goes on for 5-6 hours at a time, and then you look down at your watch and you realize the better halves are going to be ready for breakfast, and you're going to be sleep deprived but happy with the full memory card. So
Yep. Yeah, I've been there, done that.
What are you excited to see in Greenland? I'm curious. I haven't made my way up that way yet.
Just about anything. You're familiar with Rick Salmon.
Oh, excellent. Okay.
Yeah, we're going with the Rick, and the cruise ship we're going on is the same one that I did 3 years ago to Antarctica. So, yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
Oh, wonderful.
And hoping
it goes well.
Maybe, fingers crossed, that we might get some polar bears. I've yet to photograph a polar bear.
Oh, that'd be something.
So, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's on my list as well. I haven't had the chance to see wild polar bears yet either.
Well, what else have you got coming up?
Well, yeah, life has this funny way of, it's kind of a synchrony. There's always balance. I don't know if anybody else has found this, but it seems like things are always somewhat bittersweet. And 2019 kind of entered into this time where business was still continuing to grow. I continued to hone in my focus on, how I can help serve the community as more than just a photographer and a storyteller, but as a community architect in a way, as someone who's helping connect these dots between other storytellers and these broader ideas. The organizations we work with, the people we work with, fellow storytellers, and how that can mean something bigger. So I started looking at the public gallery space as one of the mediums for my work, and thinking about how we can use the gallery wall, or really any wall, to serve as a sounding board for different topics that we want to bring up to the surface. So in 2019, at the beginning of the year, I had put out a proposal to a targeted interest. I had reached out to Tampa International Airport, and I said, hey, I saw your public art program information, and I'd love to have a chat. One thing led to another, and after about a year of conversation, I was in the process of building my first solo fine art exhibition that was live for about a year straight, from the end of 2019 to mid-2020.
And you were mentioning earlier, too, that you've got a website that you were setting up. You want to talk a little bit about that real quick?
Oh, absolutely. So one of the things I'm working on is helping artists figure out how to make themselves more marketable, because as storytellers and creatives, we have this kind of scarlet letter that what we do isn't valued for what it needs to be valued at from the people that we work with and the society that experiences our stories. So my goal in positioning myself as someone who can educate other storytellers is to bring fellow storytellers along for this journey of refining how we describe who we are and what we do. So for me, this means coming along the journey as well. Step one is going to be exploding watch of our current biography, like our back of the book bio. I'll be breaking down my own bio, asking not about the who and the what, but about the why. How can we break down our work as storytellers into the why? And how can we express this idea of why do we do what we do in a way that connects with our communities and impacts them in a meaningful way, a tangible outcome? A lot of times this is measured by how busy an event is, or how many tickets are sold, or how many art pieces are auctioned for a benefit, but that's getting to be kind of a blurry line with all of this, digitization of our community now, because everybody's been so fragmented since things have changed over the years. So
especially
I guess 2019 taught me to slow down. Oh yeah, absolutely. So my mom actually got sick in 2019 before all of the other stuff started happening in the global health climate. And I found myself down in Florida from DC, where I was, scouting for some potential projects and checking in on my mom. And it taught me to really slow down and focus on kind of week by week. And it was, in hindsight, good practice for what was to come. Going to be a year and a half now that we're going on since something that none of us expected at all. So 2019 was kind of a premise to that, and a kind of a boot camp for me to make sure I could be there for my family and, keep the right things in focus and in the center of frame, if you will, and really ask myself at the end of the day what, happiness and forward movement look like through the lens of joy versus through a lens of how to put, something like competition at the front, which has never been the case for me.
That's fantastic. What's the URL of the website that you're setting up? You had told us earlier, and I want to put it down here to share it.
Oh, absolutely. So I actually need to register it still, so I don't even know if it's available yet. But the program at this point is called Backstory Boot Camp. It's codenamed Backstory Boot Camp. So if you go to thecuriouslens.org, that's my hub. Okay. That's kind of my town hall where everybody can find educational articles, connect with each other. It's off of Facebook. It's on a thing called Mighty Networks, but it's a really quiet space where I'm, delivering this kind of interactivity that I've always wanted to be able to do for this community. So thecuriouslens.org is the easiest first step, if you will, and that'll get them where they need to go for any number of directions. So.
Sounds good. And if you get the other ones set up, let us know, and we will share that.
Oh, absolutely.
We'd be glad to do that. So, Fred,
2019 was kind of this time where, taught me to slow down, but then 2020 taught everybody to slow down.
Unfortunately, yes.
I mean, how did the way you both were interacting with the world through your lens change? Because for me, it became a little bit more pensive about the sense of place, like where I was at any given time.
Well, the first thing that happened to me is last March, we had a trip planned to Japan to photograph the cherry blossoms, and that trip got canceled, of course. And Fred and I then immediately were going to go down to the Everglades, and the motel shut down, the national park shut down, so everything shut down. So we started basically just photographing
backyards, neighborhoods, noticing
just local parks.
Noticing that wildlife was suddenly appearing in places where normally it wouldn't be because it was so quiet and nobody was out. Everybody was pretty much on a lockdown basis. So we were able to see some interesting things with wildlife, and at times I think they were looking at us like, "What are you doing here?" Because we might be the only one or ones. Sometimes for a while, actually, we were isolating from each other at the very beginning, so that really changed how we work.
Yeah. Plus the Black Hills photo shootout, which the Tampa Bay shootout was an offshoot of that, was virtual last year. So, and I'm the current president of the Pinellas Friends of Florida Master Naturalists, which is a University of Florida program. And all of our programs and our meetings turned virtual with good old Zoom. So yeah, things changed quite a bit. Good old Zoom.
Well, see, that's where I'm having fun, because I like to take things and kind of reverse engineer them, MacGyver them, if you will. I'm a hacker by nature a bit, but I'm known for kind of taking the back off a clock, and then you put it back together and maybe the second hand ticks at 1.5 instead of 1, But I love to tinker is where I'm going with this. And when you said good old Zoom, it just reminded me of how prolific a tool like Zoom is becoming, when a year and a half ago nobody knew what Zoom was.
Correct.
So now we're at this point where Zoom is kind of the equivalent of a phone call, and the joke becomes, can this Zoom be a phone call? Can this phone call be an email? Can this email be a text? Can this text be not at all? Because people just seem to want to disconnect. So the growing question and challenge becomes, as storytellers, as educators, as community architects, how do we find a healthy balance between these tools like Zoom and other outlets, and how do we pair those with whatever learning style is best for each of these niche communities? Because I've noticed over time that, a young college student Zoom call is very different from a Zoom call with, maybe some classic learners in the Canon community. Who knows? And that changes very rapidly depending on the topic as well. But what I've noticed is that as soon as you add a layer of interactivity, a layer of, I kind of call this like the workshop layer. When you inject that in this conversation and you make it a two-way street, it's like day and night. You can see the difference for that community almost becoming activated by kind of a magic. And it's this interactivity that kind of brings out the, best of what they're hoping to unearth in their own work. So for me, I'm looking at tools like Zoom and I'm starting to wave goodbye to them. I have a tool as an agency now. It's called AirMeet, like a meeting, AirMeet.
AirMeet?
And it's a virtual conference software that I can host up to 100,000 people in, including breakout sessions, simultaneous webinars, one-on-one speed networking based on biography matching, coffee table,
Wow.
meetups, sponsor booths with their own coffee tables per booth. You name it. It's going to kind of change the game for how we can still lean back into tangible interaction offline, but then have this as an extra layer if and when needed. So that workshop becomes, part webinar, but then it becomes breakout into teams at these different virtual coffee tables and go through this exercise. Then put us in your ear and go out into the field now. Don't hang up and come back after lunch. Take us along for the ride during that outing. In your own backyard from the comfort and safety of your home.
For a Master Naturalist group, I'm really eager to learn more about that. But can you imagine?
I'd love to have a chat. Honestly, one thing I wanted to mention actually was like, as storytellers, we kind of get compartmentalized in what we do, right? So
Yes.
I know for the longest time, I've always been Matt the photographer, Matt the storyteller, and I'm a creative agency owner. And when you tell me about Master Naturalist program, I get excited because I see myself as a business owner who's looking actively for ways to get further involved and give back to the community through these agency tools I have. So with something like that enterprise tool I have, I'd love to have a chat with you guys and see what your pain points and needs are, because as storytellers, we both kind of speak that language, and maybe there's a way that we could, put some positive pressure for change that maybe could influence having a lot more people show up to the next thing.
Yeah, we need to have a chat offline, and I'd love to go over with you, because
That'd be great.
Can you imagine that if this COVID had happened before the internet, how it would be? No Zoom,
Man,
at
even just
least-
a couple years before, right?
Oh yeah, I just can't imagine what it must have been like, or what it would have been like. So thank goodness
But
we
what's
do have this.
fascinating to me is we're over a year out and we still have folks that are using, like pinhole camera webcams,
Yeah.
and they're full-blown professional photographers. So, I'm not scared to admit it. Right now, I'm shooting with the consumer camera. I've shot with the Canon EOS R for over a year and a half now, while my 5DSR sat on the shelf. The main reason for that being because I wanted to learn the new ecosystem. I wanted the electronic viewfinder. I wanted the new lenses coming out. I wanted everything that was about what the technology was becoming. And I mention this because right now, you guys are seeing me live on the air through that same camera. So if I can get a couple cords and cable boxes and a light from Home Depot, if you will, not even a proper video light, shooting through a strip box, then anybody can do it. And that's my hope, is that we can empower storytellers to,
I have to laugh that years ago that the Home Depot lights were man-made light source, and I had to use.
Man, they're great.
They were tungsten based, of course, back then, and I had to use a gel on them to make them daylight. But yeah,
I don't know about you, but I feel like macro photographers tinker a lot more than other types of photographers, because we just
More likely,
find
yeah.
ourselves in these
Probably
weird
because of lighting,
situations.
because of our needs with lighting,
for
and
sure.
trying to, and I think that's why we've had that spin-off of all these companies coming out with very lightweight, small lighting that you can either mount on your camera, handhold, whatever.
well, even the cameras are getting, as companies are moving toward mirrorless now,
Right.
cameras are getting smaller too, lighter weight.
Right.
I
But
don't know if you guys have heard of NFT art or crypto art, if that's been in your conversation at all. Has it?
No, I'm not familiar with it.
I think I've heard
Okay,
the
so-
MFT art, not the crypto word, but I've heard
Yeah,
MFT.
so if you saw recently, a guy named Beeple sold a JPEG for $50 million.
Oh
at
yeah, I
Christie's
did see
auctions.
that.
So this is that bubble of work. I've actually sold some NFT art recently of my own work in my first collection that I've got online right now on the blockchain, the crypto market, if you will. So
Somebody made
what I
quite a
thought-
bit of money on that too.
Oh, for sure. And you know, the best part is the moment they collected my work, it was money in my pocket and literally bread on my table the next day. I could go to the store and get my groceries for that week. I ate good, let me tell you. So I sold 3 works at my first auction. I totaled 0.3 Ethereum, which is about $500 US. And my goal is, after I break even and I'm getting on my feet a little better, to start giving back through that crypto collecting. So this is what I like to call cause-based crypto collecting. So crypto, think of that like the digital soul of your artwork. So if I had a physical print like that pink snail legs at the Moraine Art Center right now in St. Pete, if I had a digital copy of the raw file, something that I normally wouldn't let anybody else see, if somebody wanted to support that work, I might say, okay, we're gonna edition a 1-of-1 of this work in the form of this raw file, a copy of that file representing support for this work and this artist, or whatever it goes towards in terms of a cause-based idea. And then we would hold an auction, or it could be a buy it now based on the situation, and the proceeds would be split accordingly. And forever, the royalties of that work would be carried out to give back a percentage to me, the artist, in perpetuity. And then the collector would have the opportunity to resell that digital asset, if you will, on that market with a breadcrumb trail that's verified for the rest of time. Wow. So the idea of wondering where your work is and who's collected it in the digital space is no longer a question in the formal sense when it comes to collectors of crypto art.
This is fascinating. You know, may I ask where you're coming from right now?
Yeah, so right now I'm in Sarasota, Florida. I'm visiting family.
You're just below us then. We could have almost done this live.
I'd love to go for a hike sometime. Y'all ought to come down. One of my stomping grounds. I've got a few different places, and I can't go into too much detail, but got some stuff coming up where I'll be exploring more soon, and I'd love to explore with you guys.
Sounds great. And
you got a field trip?
I'm sorry?
Oh, I think my signal had cut out. You said you had a field trip?
No, he said, I feel a field trip coming on.
I said, I told Fred we got a field trip coming on down to Sarasota.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've had a couple students drive down and do kind of one-on-one socially distanced hikes with me, like a naturalist hike, but they bring their camera along, if you will. So it's not direct involvement to the degree that we're used to in a traditional workshop, but it's still a step in the right direction. So I go on a pounded paved path. It's a 3.5 mile long paved path. And I personally, when I go alone, I take my scooter, but in a perfect world, I'd see we have, a handful of those Segway scooters, and we can zip around the woods and find different cool stuff to look at. So that's what I'm working on, kind of building out over time for, ways we can have some local fun.
I'll tell you what, we've got to come to an end here, but why don't we go ahead and make a date now? We're going to come down to see you, and the next time we have you on, which is going to be very soon, because you're a fascinating young man. You've got so much to offer. I want to have you back. So if that's a date, let's do that, and then we're going to have you on live in person.
Okay,
so, rather than through Zoom.
Like a plan.
All right, great. Well, thank you so much. And do you have any parting words of wisdom before we go here?
Yeah, my parting words of wisdom would be to lean into your story as a storyteller. So we oftentimes think so much about, who we are as a label or what we do as our process or our technique, but it's that curiosity that we need to lean back into, that playfulness and that sense of wonder that kind of unlocks our next best thing. Lean back into that and start, giving back to yourself through opportunities found in creative exploration and play.
Well said. So
thank you.
We want everybody to keep watching because Matthew is going to be back soon. Thank you so much, Matthew. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I encourage everyone check out thecuriouslens.org. I'm going to be releasing my own podcast here in the near future, as well as educational courses, trainings, online workshops, in-person workshops, retreats, and a lot more. I'm just slowly building it out. That way it has meaningful purpose every step of the way. I'd love to have you come along, so please check out thecuriouslens.org.
Absolutely.
Very good.
We're going to put the link here for everybody. Thanks so much.
Awesome.